Hey everybody, welcome back to Gaijin Gaiden. And this time I want to tell you a little story about something that happened to me today. This story, fair warning, is slightly gross, so if you're the squeamish sort, you might not want to listen to this one. But it's not really that bad. Anyway, let's kind of just get right into it. So I was out and about today, and I decided to grab some lunch at Yoshinoya, which is a beef bowl place. So there's pretty simple stuff, but it's cheap and it tastes pretty good. And I eat there when I pretty often. I really like the beef bowl, the gyudon. It's good stuff and it's pretty affordable. I usually like between 550 and 670 yen, depending on exactly whether I get the large or the extra large. Anywho, so I'm sitting there eating away. It's kind of crowded because it's about 12:30, so of course the lunch rush is going on. And a guy comes down and sits next to me. I don't pay him any particular attention and just go on about my business. And I've got like maybe a third of my rice and whatnot left in my bowl. And suddenly I hear this, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a decent sized chunk of beef come and land on the counter a couple of inches away from me. So I turn around and the guy is just sitting there and he's looking up at another fellow who, from what I can tell, I think was his friend. And I can tell that it's his friend who has just hawked this piece of half chewed beef all over the counter. And I'm just, well, first, of course, I'm just in utter shock. And then I just sort of like look at the dude because I just sort of look at the guy who was sitting next to me and I'm just giving him this like, um, what the, I'm just like, are you kidding me kind of look? And he just sort of says in English, I'm sorry. So I kind of just turn and look away and look back at my food and think like, um, do I want to continue eating this? Because I'm seriously grossed out. And for all, I don't know for sure that some of that guy's slobber didn't land in my food and without me noticing it. And even if it didn't, that sure as heck seems to have killed my appetite. So I contemplate this for a minute and I decide, like, you know what, good enough. I just cannot keep eating after this. So I put my chopsticks down, I reach down to grab my backpack, start fishing the money to pay for it out of my wallet. And while I'm seeing all this, also happen to notice the server, this older middle-aged lady. She's just sort of looking at this whole situation with this just like utter disbelief. Because, I'll get into that later. Um, so after I pay for my food and grab my bag, the guy that hawked up the beef uh, comes back into the restaurant. He's got a cigarette in his mouth. I'm guessing what happened was, and again, I had my back to this whole situation, so the only thing I really saw and heard was this piece of beef come flying out of this dude's mouth and land on the counter next to me. So I'm guessing he realized he was about to throw up, turned around, the food that was in his mouth came out, and then he ran outside to puke. And he comes over to me and says in really thickly accented English, and I can tell by the way he's speaking and just the general look at him that this guy and alcohol have been getting acquainted very recently. And again, it's 12:30 in the afternoon on a Sunday. And he says to me in thick accents, like, English, I'm sorry, and then he just kind of trails off. I guess he was trying to think of the right word in English. And needless to say, I'm giving this guy the good old fashioned death glare because he's ruined my lunch. And I sort of snap at him in English, drunk, yeah, goodbye. And I sort of moved past him and out the door, and I hear him say goodbye as I go past, and I'm like, oh. which, okay, sort of snapping at this guy was probably not the most mature way to handle that situation. But, then again, I don't claim to be a saint or anything. If somebody does something that gets me really mad, um, I I'm not the sort of person that yells and screams at people. I can't really say that I've ever done that to anybody in my life. Well, okay, maybe a little bit once, but anyway, uh, well, needless to say, I was in a pretty foul mood when I stepped out of that restaurant. Uh, but eh, after and yeah, I calmed down. It took me like 20 minutes or so. I was pretty well calmed down. Um, and okay, to be fair, the guy did apologize to me, and so did his friend. So okay, all right, fine. Um, and it's not like I'm even down on alcohol. Everything in moderation, right? My feeling on alcohol is that it's fine, again in moderation, and as long as you don't bother other people. But drunks who bother other people, God, I can't stand people like that. If you're whooping and hollering and making all sorts of noise late at night because you're sloshed, if you're stumbling drunk down the street where you're at the point where you're like a hazard to traffic, if you're going onto somebody else's property and taking a whiz because you've had too much stuff, or if you've had too much stuff and you've decided to be an obnoxious jerk and just hassle people who are minding their own business. Not that I've had any personal experience with that at all, which is a lie. But yeah, but again, um, so again, after I calm down, I'm sort of like, you know what? The guy did apologize. Whatever. It's not worth hanging on to this anger. There's this saying, expecting, I don't say it quite right, but like holding on to your anger like a hot coal that you plan to throw at your enemy only burns you, or something along those lines, which is supposedly a line from one of the followers of Buddha. Um, and I can't remember exactly where I heard that, but when I did, it really did strike a chord with me that that's true. Holding on to anger is really extraordinarily counterproductive in life. You just have to feel, you realize you're angry, acknowledge that you're angry, and then just let it go, because holding on to it doesn't serve any useful purpose. Um, but that's easier said than done. As you can probably guess by the tone of my voice, there are one or two incidents with people who've had too much alcohol bothering me when I was minding my own business that even after all this time can still make me a little bit cranky if I start to dwell on them. But c'est la vie, right? But anyway, honestly, yeah, people who are drunk and causing problems, well, of course they're annoying. But I will say that here in Japan, one of the nice things is that annoying drunk people, well, drunk people, you're going to find those guys anywhere, but usually people here remain much more well mannered when they're when they're drunk than people back in the US. Now, of course, there are exceptions to this, and in all fairness, when you got to throw up, you got to throw up. You can't really control that. So I suppose maybe I was being a little bit unfair to this guy. On the other hand, what's up with you if you're drunk off your ass at 12:30 on a Sunday? Anyway, what I'm trying to get here is that experiences like this are most certainly the rare exceptions. I have seen more than my fair share of sloshed people here, and the vast majority of them are just sort of going about their business and not really bothering anybody. And yes, you occasionally see the occasional person painting the pavement with what used to be their dinner. But again, I've seen that in America too. It's kind of funny. Speaking of which, I was actually at a street festival that I posted some video footage of a couple of weeks back, and I saw exactly that. There was very obvious, very gross puddle on the ground, and nearby I could see this guy comforting what I assume was his girlfriend, who was obviously majorly trashed. And okay, puke. So gross. Like I'm referring to the actual puke on the ground, not romance. My reaction to romance or anything like that. But I just have to look at that scene. It's like, man, lady, this guy is there comforting you and taking care of you while you just puked in the streets. This guy obviously cares for you a great deal. He's probably a keeper. So that's the end of that story. So I'm gonna call it here, guys. As always, thanks for joining me here on Gaijin Gaiden. Please also join me on Twitter at Gaijin Gaiden. And until next time, take care and have a good one.